33-story hotel and condo project.
I'd probably be
Okay,
like
like
that.
stop, tap.
This is a plan by the community for the community.
This one here. You showed me.
No problem, Ken. Thanks for having me.
It's Kent Molgat for Kelowna Now. And we're joined by Skyla Jeanette, also known as the Poetry Elf,
Yes.
here to promote your event on Saturday, which is the Poetry
Burlesque.
Okay, now that is taking poetry, something that people think of as being very bookish, and mixing it all up with this sexuality of a burlesque show.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to take poetry out of colleges and coffee shops and that kind of dry atmosphere and introduce a looser perspective of it. Trying to make it more relatable and in a setting where people can kind of relax into it.
Right. Literally making poetry sexy.
Yes.
And you've done a few of these shows.
Yeah.
And what's the uptake? What kinds of people are appreciating it?
Well, I've done 3 shows so far since October, and they've all been in the upstairs of the Habitat, so a little bit smaller venue, about 75 people. But we do sell out, and we have all sorts of people coming in, different age groups, but it's a lot of fun.
Right. So, what sort of performers would a person see over the course of this show? Obviously, you'll do your thing. What else will people see?
So there's obviously poetry, but we also have dancers. This event will have belly dancing. We'll have an aerial hoop act, so somebody twirling around in a hula hoop in the air. Fun.
Wow, yeah.
And then we'll also have 3 ladies performing solo and group burlesque acts.
Right.
As well as comedy, storytelling, drag, so many things.
A drag queen or queens?
Drag queen, singular.
Okay. Now, we've seen burlesque kind of emerging over the last several years, and it seems to me that it's kind of like a new way of packaging sexuality that sort of takes it a bit out of the brown paper bag.
Yeah, we want to kind of create a platform for people to connect through sexuality because everybody does have a connection to sex, and there's no point in keeping it a secret. Why not have an opportunity to share our creative endeavors that have been inspired by that?
So, are you knocking down barriers that people have about sexuality? I do think that our society still does have kind of historical hang-ups that we're sort of getting over one at a time. Starting to accept homosexuality is still hard for some people even today. Is it about that sort of thing?
Yeah, kind of seeking to provide a sexual revolution in Kelowna through a unique stimulation of culture.
A revolution? Haven't we already gone through that? Or is it constant?
I think it is constant. I don't think change ever really stops, and that we do have to kind of combat the negative stigma towards sex that is provided through some media, including pornography, and provide a real life, real people connection where it's showing how sex can be for different people, not cookie cutter media portrayal.
Right. It seems sort of like burlesque, or this kind of event, is kind of that middle ground between this kind of mainstream pretend society where sex doesn't even come up, and then pornography where it's just 110% sex. So this is just kind of a bridge?
Yeah, so our poets will talk about, our one poet has her lovely man, and she always does poetry about their sex life, and like they'll mention about how the neighbor knocks on the door thinking that they're like doing bloody murder. It's like, no, hold up. And she does it so well. But and then my kind of poetry is very sensual. Like I have a really short one called Love Me Whole, and it says, "You can't just love every other freckle on my body." So just little sensuality.
Right. Well, it sounds pretty tasteful, but you indicated prior to this interview that it can be pretty explicit.
Yes, there are definitely some performances that are a bit raunchier than others.
Right.
So there will definitely be some stripping, not to a full extent, but both
Right.
men and women will be taking their clothes off.
Okay, so that's the other sort of promise that burlesque offers, is that there a little bit will be left to the imagination.
Yes, so there's definitely still some taste and some boundaries that are set.
Right.
We're not a strip club, but
Right, so it's sexy, it's a sexual performance, or at least a lot of them are, but there's some promise that it's not going to be over the top X-rated stuff.
yeah, no.
Even though some of the language I think will be.
I think, yeah, I've definitely seen some of our audience members with kind of an orgasmic face, so really enjoying the performances.
Right. So I think that it would be a chance for people to get out and kind of see a show that is really talking a lot and addressing sexuality, but yet, hey, it's a poetry reading, they can tell their friends, right? A bit of an excuse for people to explore something that they otherwise would take a pass on.
Yeah, and also because of all the variety of performance, I think that it does connect the different niches in our community. I find Kelowna can be a little bit cliquey. So when you have dance girls meeting poets and finding out that they both like mermaids or something, you have a best friendship.
Right. So you said, and we talked a little bit about a sexual revolution. Where are we at with that? What are the boundaries that you're kind of gnawing away at in the content of, for instance, your poetry and performance?
Well, I found that I have a lot of poems that relate to sexual content. I practice polyamory as well, so that's something that's a big part of my life, and I like to share my experiences with other people and connect to that by sharing poetry.
So, polyamory. Now, I think that our society is kind of, to some extent, begrudgingly accepted homosexuality and bisexuality, but polyamory, that's a bridge too far for many people.
I think a lot of people just don't quite understand or comprehend the idea of it and how somebody can have the energy maybe to give love to more than one person.
Right.
But I think on stage here we're really seeking to provide a platform for all kinds of sexuality to be expressed and normalized.
Right. So at least if someone chooses that other people should understand that it's a thing and that someone might be a good person and that just happens to be their choice.
Yeah,
And
when
that-
you see them on stage as a real person in front of you, it's hard to deny them humanity, even
Right.
if you don't agree with their sexual choices.
So do you get any pushback on that after a performance? Are there people that are, like, they're going to get that message out of your show, that's in your mind, okay? Do you get people pushing back on you?
No, I mean, I had some comments about maybe too much boobs for some people, but I mean, if you don't want to see boobs, maybe you could stay home.
Right.
I have other poetry events you can see me at.
Right. So that's the only sort of, hey, come on, like, easy on that. But
Yeah, but
you know, I was saying before, we posted an interview that we happened to do with a woman walking down the street topless. We just asked her what was her mindset about all of that, and you know, the uptake on that video was 100 times a lot of the other ones we do. So
yeah, it is interesting because toplessness is legal in BC, but it's still such a taboo.
right.
So even in an event like ours, we get pushback for showing a little bit of skin when
Right.
it's kind of clearly conveyed in the title.
And there's going to even be the nipple is going to be covered.
For
right?
the most part.
Unless there's a malfunction.
Yeah, and we had a performer forget to put on her tassels, so there was full tit at one of the shows. But,
Right.
you know, she had a scarf. It was still tasteful.
Right. Well, it sounds like an interesting show, and just to remind our viewers, that's Saturday, the 25th, at the Habitat on Leon, and I think you enter up the alley. Is that right?
That's correct. and
That's
we're
a little
starting-
odd. You know, going into an alley in that part of town in Kelowna seems a little sketchy, but that is the way it's set up.
It's actually funny because the alley has less less of the people than on the front street.
Right. So that seems to be working anyway for the Habitat right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And hopefully you get lots of people out for that on Saturday night.
Yeah, we have lots of room, so you can grab your tickets at Mosaic Books, and the show starts at 7 p.m. this Saturday.
Terrific. Skyla, the Poetry Elf.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot for coming in.
Take care.
And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.